Good evening and welcome to Connection Cafe. I say good evening, you could be watching on catch up. Good day, whatever time you are watching. So my name is Yvonne O'Garro, and this is Yoga Journeys. And Yoga Journeys was devised to give a platform to yogis of color to allow us to have a platform to share our yoga journeys on the back of the Black Lives Matter protest last summer. And More Yoga wanted a way to have space for us to amplify the voices of melanated yogis. So this evening, I have the pleasure of hearing the yoga journey of Paula Hines. Welcome, welcome, Paula.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me.
The pleasure is mine and everybody that's watching, because this is, I look forward to all the journeys, but I have to say I'm very much looking forward to your journey because it seems very interesting.
Oh, really? Okay. I hope it doesn't disappoint.
I'm sure it will. I'm sure it'll be very interesting. So you're well?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Good stuff. Start of spring. Happy spring equinox.
Yes, I'm so happy that it's spring. You can feel the days getting longer and brighter. So very.
It makes a difference, doesn't it? It really makes a difference. Yeah, it's like 6:45 before it got dark. I was interested to see how long it would last, about 6:45. Yeah, GMT, that is, depending where people are. So before we dive into the main Yoga Journeys questions, going to get you to do the 30-second lift intro. And that is if you were in a lift with somebody and you had 30 seconds to get from bottom to top and you had to introduce yourself to somebody, how would you introduce yourself? I won't time you, don't worry. It's just I'm just interested in how people introduce themselves, because we're not linear anymore. We've all got different bits and pieces to our lives, so I think it's just really important that you introduce yourself as you would like.
Okay, no, thank you. So I am Paula Hines and I am a Londoner, born and bred, and I'm a yoga teacher and writer. That's primarily what I would say. And in terms of yoga, I've been practicing consistently classes from regular classes about 20 years and teaching for 10 years this year.
Wow, amazing.
My yoga journey has been a really enjoyable one, but completely opposite of what it started to be. So I went from doing lots of very strong dynamic practice and lots of hot yoga to where I am now, which is mostly teaching slower practices.
I hear you. I hear you.
And yoga nidra, and my own practice going a certain way led to my teaching going a certain way as well.
Yeah, it makes sense. I hear you, definitely. There's some synergy there because I got hooked on hot yoga and had a stronger practice, the vinyasa flow. And then one day I'm like, I'm sweating. Why am I sweating? Why am I doing this? Anyway, enough of me. So are you ready to start the Yoga Journeys question?
I am, yeah.
Woohoo! Okay, so kicking off, honoring our ancestors, please share your family lineage.
Yeah, so my family hails from Jamaica, but both my parents, actually from the same part of Jamaica as well.
Okay.
So they a place called Clarendon. So they knew each other or knew of each other growing up, and completely. Well, I don't know. Maybe there are no coincidences, but my grandmothers were friends. Like they were friends. Like my dad's mum and my mum's mum.
Okay.
For a very long time. So I think that was a big part of how come they knew of each other when they were. So there's something really lovely. I mean, both of my grandmothers are no longer here, and I didn't get to meet my dad's mum because she passed before I was born.
Okay.
I've always thought there's something so lovely about the fact that they were really genuinely close friends. And so in terms of ancestry, that's interesting. I mean, or maybe just very common because it's the West Indies. But there's very little that I know beyond grandparents, but what I do know is, naturally African, but also Indian and Chinese.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
and that's very common. Well, I think it's a bit more common than a lot of people realise because
Okay.
of
Indentured labour. I think I've lost you. Hopefully you'll come back in a moment. Sorry, technical hitch. It's Zoom. Paula will come back. I'll pause it. If I'll just leave it running. I'll entertain you. I will pause it here. So we have Paula back. Technical hitches are sorted. So you were, before we lost each other, you were talking about the family lineage, as well as your grandparents being, your grandmothers being really good friends. There's also an African connection back in the history. Plus, you said Indian and Chinese. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, well, that was like my dad's mum. I got my paternal grandmother, I guess. I never got to meet her, but I know that she was a dark-skinned Indian Jamaican woman.
Okay, right.
And also the Chinese is on my dad's side as well. So I don't know. It's kind of it's a generational thing. But like if you grew up with the photo albums and all the black and white photos.
Yes.
And I kind of like looking through them, and I just remember sort of seeing these, black and white pictures, and I just remember like when I was kind of primary school age, the first time I saw them, and seeing a photo of these Chinese children, and I was like, who are they? I looked at these albums of like lots of black people, and then he explained to them about them being my cousins and this sort of part of like his family. So, and again, I never got to meet them because that part of the family, I think a couple came study over here in the 50s or 60s, but then went to America. So there's like bits of family kind of just dotted around in different places. Not everyone came to England.
It is fascinating because I think the Indian and the Chinese connection in the Caribbean was from the indentured labor. Yeah. And if you're watching, you're not aware of what that term is. It was, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, it was after slavery was abolished, there was, what was this, 4-year period where...
A bit longer than that.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was meant to be 4 and it was longer.
Yeah.
And where the slave owners then said they needed more labor to, have the work that still needed to be done. So then there was an idea to bring people from India, from China to carry on working. So that's where those communities grew up in the Caribbean. Yeah.
And also you've got certain types of foods.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, because you would bring those traditions with you. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, we're going to start, one of my cousins is going to start our family tree. I'm like, whoa.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's already started some of it. Okay, so thank you. So moving on with the rest of the Yoga Journeys questions. Where, when, and with whom was your first yoga class?
Oh, I think we touched on this before in a previous conversation. So
I can to explain.
Oh gosh. Okay, I feel really bad. So I will fess up, I don't remember the teacher's name. So this was local to me in Streatham. So I've always lived in South London. I grew up in South London. So it was around 2001, around that time. So prior to that, a little prior to that, I had been kind of, I guess, experimenting with yoga, but not in classes. It's like I used to be a member of my local library, so it was actually like getting books out of the library and trying to and then I kind of that tailed off, and then it was actually because I had quite bad lower back pain, lots of work and lots of sitting, and I actually really wasn't that fit as well, to be honest. And I remember a work colleague saying, oh, you should try yoga. It's really good, good for back pain, and it's really good for stress. And I thought, well, job is quite stressful. And I was a member of my local gym, which was at the time called Holmes Place. I don't think that they exist as a chain anymore. I think they got taken over by Virgin Active, I think.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I do remember the name, but yeah.
So I was already a member of Holmes Place in Streatham. This is why I'm hoping if anyone happens to watch this and knows who I'm talking about.
Please, I hope they do.
And so I had already been going as a member of the gym to body pump classes and Pilates classes. And I thought, oh, there's a yoga class on the schedule. I think it was a Thursday evening from what I remember. And it was after work. So I'd go from work to this class. And that was how it started. So I went with no expectations, and it was purely thinking, well, I'll try anything if this is actually going to help. So I think, like a lot of people, purely from the physical perspective and not thinking about anything else. But what I didn't expect and what happened, from the first class, I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. But it was the way that yoga, in a way that Pilates didn't, I would say. Not that there was anything wrong with Pilates. I really enjoyed that. It really put me back in touch with my body.
Right.
I found that happened very quickly. And the last time I had remembered experiencing that sort of connection with my body was as a child, between the ages of 4 and 16. I used to dance regularly, like dance classes. So that was like ballet, tap, modern jazz.
Oh, wow.
And so that was like, so as a child, like dancing was my hobby, I guess. Like that and writing, funnily enough. And so when I was in, and I'd actually kind of forgotten what that feeling was. And then I had that feeling again when I was in that yoga class. So
what sort of style was it?
It was Hatha.
Okay.
So it was described, it was just yoga.
Yeah.
But the teacher saying, "Oh, this is Hatha yoga," I was like, "Oh, okay." So it wasn't
power
flow
or nothing like that. Yeah. No flow, no vinyasa.
There wasn't flows, there wasn't vinyasas. So I at that point I didn't really know what a vinyasa was. So it wasn't like it was, and the teacher. So it was a man. He was white, had brown hair and a beard. And I remember he didn't wear any lycra. It was all kind of like linen trousers. But I will say, because of the time it was 2001, even though it's not that long ago, it was really different time yoga wise.
Yeah, of course.
I remember like in the class, it was a real mix of people, and most people were not wearing leggings and like fancy tops. It was like I showed up
Lululemon.
No, but I mean, I remember I just showed up in like tracksuit bottoms and a baggy t-shirt, and that was how a lot of people just showed up.
Yeah.
So and in those classes, it's the first time I experienced, like in Shavasana, that kind of the systematic relaxation that you do, guided through Shavasana, and it's also the first time I experienced Yoga Nidra. Except he didn't know that that's what it was. He didn't like name it as that, but that was what it was. And so that was the first time of me going consistently to a class. It was a weekly class once a week, and it did help my back pain.
Excellent.
But it was the other stuff that I didn't expect that came with it.
That's great. That's really good. So what were you working as that was causing you the stress and the back pain?
I was working in TV.
Okay.
So I worked in television full time for 14 years. So actually that year, 2001 was the year I started working at the BBC, but I actually started going to that class before. So I was working, before I worked at the BBC, I was doing different freelance roles. So I worked for a while I worked as a production secretary on like daytime stuff, and then a production coordinator, which is like the next step up from a secretary. So that's usually the person who, on a show, daytime stuff, it would be where you have like guests, like, and you know, the items and things. You're the person who is booking cars, cabs, and people's accommodation, and organising. If there's a team of runners, you're organising them, and so it's a very sort of administrative, organisational role. I was doing that for a while. I also had a period where I was a live phone room coordinator. So
on any famous shows that we knew? What shows were they?
Oh no, it wasn't. None of them were famous. It was like I worked at a company called Pearson. I don't know if it's called that anymore, but it was stuff for Channel 5. So this is how long it's going back. So I'm going back to the 90s. I'm going back to the 90s now.
Wow. Okay.
When I started working in TV, it was so around the time Channel 5 launched.
Right. Okay. A long time ago.
Yeah. And so I think, like a lot of people in TV, I started as a runner. And so I worked in a phone room. So I remember working in the phone room. It was actually a really fun job. And
in the phone room for Channel 5?
Yeah, so it was a couple of daytime shows. So like magazine shows. So the sort of thing that's similar to, like, say, This Morning, whereas that sort of where they have different items. So it's going to be on for, like, I don't know, 2.5 hours, and it's live. And so it's when they have the phone in with, like, the gardening expert or the doctor, and and
I want to ask a question of the gardening expert. You'd put me through.
And it would be my question. So you're kind of fielding the calls, and you're the one. So when you watch something live and there's delay, it was like in that room we had the delay button, so we were always a bit ahead in case. So you have to gauge if someone's actually, like, going to swear or something.
Really, and be ready to, like, put them on delay.
Always, I remember.
Amazing. Exciting.
And that was fun. And I did enjoy that, and then and I got to work with some really great people as well at that time. So I was doing that, and then, so I think 2001 was quite a significant year, because it was sort of where I went from doing that kind of stuff to then working at the BBC, which was still TV, but very different. I went into script development, which was something I'd wanted to do.
Which development?
So script development.
Oh, okay.
So
what does that mean?
So that was where I was working. In my case, I was working in the comedy department.
Okay.
So it's when, like, in terms of narrative comedy, so basically things like TV, sitcoms, comedies, some radio stuff.
Okay.
And so my role in doing development, it's usually. So I became a script editor. I started more like as an admin assistant person.
But you worked your way up.
Yeah, and then became
work.
Yeah, and so it sort of meant that you're working, like, with writers. So you're trying to, like, help them, in terms of the development of their ideas. And often what it meant is, like, you're like a objective eye. So if you think about, like, you're writing something and it's like if you're trying to sub-edit your own work.
Right.
Someone else. So I'd be like that sort of like that objective outside eye, and then sometimes the link between the writer and production, if something was going to be going into production. So just all sorts of different, like, things it could involve depending on what the project was. But usually it was about working on the scripts and working with writers directly.
So you get a credit at the end of programs?
If I worked on a production. So
what was your last credit for the BBC?
Oh gosh, well, my last credit for the BBC was as a writer. So
what was that on?
I was a writer on 3 series of a radio sitcom. It was a Radio 4 sitcom called Rudy's Rare Records. And it was so it was a Lenny Henry vehicle. So it was Lenny Henry's idea.
Okay.
And it was about, and I wasn't the only writer on it, I was like a writer on it, but I wrote like episodes across 3 series, and it ran for 4 series, I think. So I came in at series 2, and it was about 3 generations in a record shop.
Oh wow, okay.
In Birmingham. So
of course, with Lenny Henry, yeah.
Henry's character was like the son in the middle. So it was Rudy was his dad. He was like it was an old school kind of reggae primarily. Okay. And so and his dad Rudy he was quite mischievous and always had stories about how he met Bob Marley in the.
I've never heard of it. I'm gonna have to look it up.
And then his teenage son, and then so it was like it was like sandwich generation thing. Yeah. So yeah, it's
fascinating.
That was back in 2012. That was my last credit, and it does sometimes get repeated on like Radio 4 Extra, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Good for you.
But yeah, so that was like so
2001. Okay.
Yeah, so that year was where I kind of made the change from that kind of live telly stuff, very different, and then going into something that was that development stuff that was more very different and a different focus. Okay. But it involved working. So where I went from working a lot in teams, I went to working quite a lot on my own,
right?
Or maybe with like one other person or a tiny team, where it was being on like a big live juggernaut of a show with just loads of people.
Okay.
So I think there was also that element of this part of the stress was like making that adjustment as well and wanting to do well and wanting to make a good impression. Okay. So yeah, so that's got to 2001. Yeah.
So 2001 is your first yoga class, and obviously this pivotal change in TV, right? So how long did it take you to realize you wanted to start teaching yoga? So 2001, first class. When did you start to think the teaching bug was a reality?
Yeah, quite a long time.
Okay.
So after that class, I kind of went in and out, I suppose, a little bit. So I guess sort of as a way of example of how I decided I wanted to teach. I kind of went in, it was 10 years. It was nearly 10 years. It was nine, nearly 10 years. So if that was 2001 was my first classes that I started regularly going to, and 2011 was when I did my first training.
Right. Okay.
So in that period, there were phases where after that, I stopped going to the other class only because basically that teacher left, and I don't know whether
the unnamed teacher in the linen trousers.
Yeah. So basically that class wasn't there anymore. So I kind of I had a period of like doing stuff at home, yoga DVDs. Then I found another class. Then I ended up getting into hot yoga somewhere along the way.
As we all do.
Yeah. And then that's where it kind of started with all the different styles of yoga over that 10-year period.
Okay.
So yoga was always there as a concept. I'd have periods where I would go once a week, and then periods where I go like 3 or 4 times a week.
Yes.
Depending on
absolutely.
where I was.
So before we move on, sorry, carry on.
Oh no, so I was going to say, so 2010, 2011, in terms of, that was when I first got the idea of thinking about teaching.
Do you remember what gave you the idea to start teaching?
I don't know if I remember it being a specific thing. I think it was just a culmination.
Because you've been doing it for so long, maybe as well.
Yeah, I think because it had been this constant for quite a long time by this point, and but it also tied in with, I had been at my job, that same job at the BBC, or the same place, and I was when you sort of reach a bit of a crossroads, and I was starting to think about potentially making some changes. But then I sort of thought, well, I'm not really sure if that's feasible. I'm not sure how that would work. And, I live in London, I live on my own. If I don't work, then no one's going to pay my mortgage, all that kind of stuff. So thinking about possibilities. so and then I kind of then put that idea on the back burner for a bit. Thought, but what I decided was I definitely wanted to do teacher training,
right?
even if I didn't necessarily want to teach. So that was 2010, 2011. There was like rumours of redundancies happening
at the BBC.
Yeah, within a number of departments, including our department. So I'd reached a point where I was considering leaving.
There's a sign. There was a sign.
And I remember like getting a nod from somebody saying, "Actually, don't hand your notice in."
Wait.
Like,
exactly. Yeah. Wait.
So I did, and I did get made redundant, and actually, so for me, it was the right time.
Yes. Yes.
It was, and so I thought, oh, this is my chance, or this is the right time for me to actually do teacher training. At that point, I still wasn't 100% sure about teaching.
Okay, but you wanted to deepen the practice.
Yeah, so I definitely wanted to deepen my practice, and I'll sort of go a little bit into why I was unsure about teaching in a second. But I, at that point, was doing a lot of hot yoga, and I was going, gosh, at least like 4 times a week, I would say.
Wow.
And
okay.
Yeah, and there was a teacher training that they were doing at that studio.
Oh, okay.
And I knew people who had done that training, and I went to classes of people who'd done that training. They didn't all teach at that place, but so that was actually, it was Yoga Haven was the place.
Okay.
So I was going to the studio in Clapham at the time.
Okay.
And so when my redundancy then happened, and they were like, things, I was thinking, oh, they've got their teacher training coming up, because I'd spoken to so many of the people who'd done their training before, and I thought, okay, I've kind of got these various accounts of what their experience of their training was, and so when I decided I was going to do the training, and people asked me, oh, so you're going to teach? I just said, oh, yeah, I think but actually inside thinking, I'm not sure. And the reason why is because I had such a crippling fear of public speaking.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, really,
wow.
like really terrible. To the point, even in my work meetings with colleagues that I got on with and knew, if it was too large a group of people, I would really struggle to speak.
Wow. Okay.
And to the point where, like, I couldn't have even done something like this back then.
Good for you.
It was the point where I couldn't control my voice audibly shaking, like you would hear it. That's how bad. What was the shift then?
How did you get past that to now?
I think it was just practice. It was the thing about I think it's the doing something over and over again. So it was actually during the process of the training, and that I actually, and then when you start to do teaching practice, and
yes, yeah. You've got no choice but to speak, have you?
And but even though I was still really, you could tell it was like not easy, but I think, and this is probably what lots of people have said, I think because I think the desire that once I'd made the decision, I think the desire to teach overrode the fear in a way.
Right, yes.
I was determined to overcome it. And I thought, well, if I just keep doing this, maybe it will get easier or better, and actually, yes, when I think back to then, the fact that now I still can't quite believe it.
No, good for you.
Because I think that was like, And I think it's not a coincidence that most of the roles that I took, even in my work, were very much behind the scenes.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So you didn't have to.
Even in terms of even in terms of like script editing, it was about supporting other people, supporting other writers.
Yeah.
And then with my coordinating, organising everyone else, and like being the problem solver for everyone else. So so that was why I was unsure about teaching. So I think the transition happens somewhere within the training.
And just before we get into the actual teacher training, have you started writing for On Magazine yet? Because that needs to come in somewhere. No, not yet. Okay.
Yeah.
Not yet. Okay. So moving on then. So we're 10 years later. Where, when, and with who? Well, I know when. Where was your teacher training?
So it was 2011. So the same year I got made redundant.
Yeah.
It was 2011 with Yoga Haven, and it was partly in Morocco.
Oh wow! Okay.
Partly, and the rest of it was in London. So
sorry, I misunderstood you. I thought Yoga Haven was the studios you were doing the hot yoga. Misunderstanding, right?
Yeah,
okay.
No, I was. That's the thing. So I was also doing hot yoga there, and it was going there so regularly. I was a regular.
Okay.
I learned more about their training. It's almost like I kind of did my research before, because so many people, before I decided to do their training, I spoke to so many people who'd done the training before.
Right.
So, and this was before I knew the redundancy was going to happen, because it was in my mind as a possibility. So when I knew it was possible, I did sign up to their 200-hour.
In Morocco?
And also the training, it wasn't actually a hot yoga training, it was like a Hatha training.
Right, okay, amazing. Morocco.
For
how long?
So it was over a period of, I can't remember exactly now, but I think it was over a period of about 5 months or so.
Amazing.
So semi-intensive, but not quite. So what it was I think we had, I really have to cast my mind back. I think it was a fortnight we did in Morocco. And the reason for that part, it was almost like, it was long days, but that was really focused on, I think we had no distractions. So we were focused on that, mostly the asana and philosophy while we were there.
Yeah.
And beginning to do teaching practice with each other. And then when we came back to London, it was just meeting up like on weekends and having to do assignments and work in between.
Yeah.
So it was that was where we did like the other aspects, like the anatomy and all the other parts, and more of our assessments then in London.
Yeah.
And so it was, and that for me works quite well. I think also because at that point I wasn't working because
you were made redundant.
Yeah. And so I actually had the time to just fully deep dive and to really focus on the assignments in between and do the study. And I think that works well for me compared to, like, I know some people who went and did like where they go away somewhere and just do an intense 4 weeks.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think for me, this way, which was kind of over a period of a number of months, so it was an intense bit, and then the other bit was a bit more spread out. The way I learn as well, that worked
was better. Yeah, definitely. Amazing. Yeah. So Yoga Haven, like it. Yeah. Okay, so can you recall how many people were on the training altogether?
I'm laughing because I think we were so lucky in a way. So there were 7 of us.
No.
So they had 7. I think they had done trainings where they'd been a lot more people.
Wow, I think so wonder they didn't cancel it.
Signed up. Well, no, they didn't.
Wow,
they didn't.
7 people.
They still did it. So
It's
now
amazing.
they still do. So I hope I'm not forgetting an 8th person, but I checked and I went back and looked, I had to dig out photographs.
Mm-hmm.
So I was sort of thinking, no, there's 7 of us.
7 of us.
So
Wow.
unless there was an 8th person who took the photos that I've forgotten, it was, yeah. And so it was 5 women, 2 men, and I was the only person of colour.
Wow. Okay.
But I thought the fact that, but they were like,
are they from all over the world as well?
No, actually, they were all from the UK except for one lady who came from Italy.
Okay.
Yeah.
7. That's blown me away because
I just, that's why when I think back now, because I didn't realise how significant at the time it was that there was only 7. And we were staying in this place all together. So where normally you would be sharing a room, we had a room on each to go back and study in. And there were, I think, 3 or 4 tutors there as well. So like there were 2 tutors who weren't there the whole week. They kind of split, you know, but yeah, so I think the fact that there was only 7 of us and we had that much attention and time.
Wow, that's something to remember, right? A teacher training of 7. You'd never hear of that now.
Yeah, I know. So when
you didn't know, yeah, you had nothing to compare it to.
That different. So it wasn't until down the line I'd then hear people sort of say, oh, there was like 30 people on my training.
Exactly, yeah. 33. Yeah. But hey, how good for you. Okay, so moving on to the highs and lows of the wellness industry. Oh, yes, indeed. What comes to mind, and I would just ask you if you do have any lows, to share the lows first and then end on any highs if you have any highs.
Yeah, gosh, I mean, there's a lot I could say, but
it's your journey, you say what you want to say.
But I think for me, I think because it's been, I think, an ongoing thing, I think a big low for me has been like that there's still not enough diversity. And by that, I don't just mean in terms of ethnicity, I mean like gender diversity, body diversity, it's just across the board.
Yes.
And I think about the fact that there's, so in the since 2000, since I started teaching to now, there are a number of times when I've been told openly that I'm too fat to be a yoga teacher.
It's criminal, isn't it? It's like really
and I know that I haven't been hired at certain things because of it. And sadly, from talking to other people, I know that I'm not alone in that.
No, it's shocking though, isn't it? In this day and age.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think, so that for me, that's a big low because it's so ongoing. And I think it's, you can sort of see that there's still, there are some changes happening, but it's still, well, you know,
slow.
Yeah.
But we live in hope.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, indeed.
Exactly.
Any other lows, or do you have any highs?
No, I would say, to be honest, I would say for me that's the main low.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
In terms of, I really thought about this, and for me, the highs have actually been the people. I think, because when I think back, you know, I feel so lucky. I have met so many incredible people, whether that's other teachers, whether it's the people who have chosen to come to a class, workshop, retreat. And I feel the same whether someone has come once or whether they've come back more than once. Like I never take it for granted. And also within that, some of the opportunities that I have had. So for instance, quite early on in my teaching, around 2012, during 2012, I got the chance to start assisting on yoga retreats with Sally Potts, teachers called Sally Potts. And I used to go to Sally's classes before I was a teacher, and actually I remember going on a couple of her retreats, just going as a guest. So when I then was teaching and she offered me the opportunity to kind of come along and help out, I was like, oh, this is great. Because it was always, so there was a familiarity there.
Yes.
And I think, you know, I meet some really fantastic people, guests on those retreats. And so I had the opportunity to kind of go from assisting to then teaching whole weekend retreats on my own for quite a while. So I ended up teaching over 20 retreats, including teaching on, I think, 1 or 2 in Spain, and then a complete separate one, which was with another teacher in Montenegro, which is somewhere I'd never expected to go.
Nice.
So those sorts of things it's always been tied back to the people. So that's really the biggest high. And probably one of the reasons that I'm still doing this as well.
Yeah, definitely. I hear you. No, definitely. The connection is quite special in the industry. Lovely. Thank you. Last few questions coming up. So what has got you through all the lockdowns? So when I started this in the summer last year, it was just like the one lockdown, and now we're in lockdown 3 in the UK. So have they been different for you, and you know, how have you managed to get through them?
They've definitely been different, and I think, I mean, I guess for yoga has been a constant. Yoga's been a big thing that got me through. But yeah, my experience of each one has been very different. The first one was quite hard, particularly at the beginning. And I think because with the first one, that was when it was like an hour of exercise, at least here in the UK, depending on where people are watching, it was like an hour of exercise a day, stay at home.
Stay at home, save lives. And
there was no support bubbles or meeting a friend for socially distance walk, because like you were just, and I live on my own.
Stay at home.
And I live on my own, and so and also for me, that was March, wasn't it? March 23rd, I think.
Which is a year tomorrow.
Yeah.
A whole year of our lives. And
that was only like my mother's funeral was early March, so I was like in the early stages of she passed away unexpectedly, so it was like the early stages of grief and coming to terms with that, and then we're in a lockdown. And then, you know, we know what happened within that first lockdown as well, with, you know, obviously. So definitely, I don't know if I've ever been more grateful for having a yoga practice.
Yes.
Actually, particularly in that first lockdown. I would say in terms of the other lockdowns, the one in the middle, that was actually not too bad, and I think also it was different because we were able to do a little bit more. I think that first one. And I think definitely having support, like my brother is my support bubble.
Oh, bless. So bless his heart. Thanks, bro.
He also lives quite near me, so we're walking from each other.
That's good. That's very good.
So that I feel fortunate to have that. That's definitely helped. Being as much as possible, it's mostly virtually like this, to keep in touch with friends. So being grateful for technology that's allowed that.
Yeah, definitely.
And having a routine. I think just actually creating a routine for myself. I think especially in the first lockdown, because I think we're all in shock at the very start.
Oh, definitely. It's like, what is this? This parallel universe that I'm living in.
But I think the thing that made a big difference also was just deciding to create a routine that worked for me, and, you know, just looking after myself as best as I could, really.
Good. And then fingers crossed, we're hopefully coming out of this in June, but then there's Yeah, fingers crossed indeed. Okay, so you touched on, the Black Lives Matter protests and George Floyd's killing, may he rest in peace. Can you recall at the time, because the advice was, people diversify their feeds, understand more about other cultures. Do you remember getting increased followers and any approaches from studios?
I remember that time very well. I mean, gosh. It, for multiple reasons, it was such a heavy time.
That's a very good word. Heavy is right. Yeah.
I felt it physically, and I remember speaking to other people. I felt it physically. I felt exhaustion. I do. This is a really interesting question. So I do remember that I got a sudden uptick of followers, seemingly overnight. I know it was the case for virtually everyone I was in contact with. But it sat very uncomfortably with me, actually, because of the understanding of the why that was happening. And the reason I don't know exactly how many followers is that I do, at the time, remember that I did actually go in and look at my followers, and I actually did remove some followers.
Oh, did you? Oh, that was interesting. Oh, tell me more about that. Why are you happy to share? Why did you remove some?
Yeah, I don't know if there was a really easy, why. I think just looking at, I kind of looked at everyone I was following.
Right.
As well.
Yeah.
And I looked at who was following me.
Right.
And I think because even before all of that happened, I didn't feel, it's probably the opposite of what the point is of social media, but I didn't feel that caught up on, I must gain lots more followers.
Oh God, no, quite. I agree with you, yeah.
So I kind of thought, actually, I think I remember reading something, and this was before George Floyd, but I think when that happened, I was reminded of something I had read where it was just, if you're following something and, if something that makes you feel bad, then that you can unfollow. It was something along those lines, I think.
Right.
I read.
Okay.
And so I actually started doing that, and I kind of then looked in at my followers and who was following me, or who there was lots of, what I noticed was quite a lot of people who had private profiles, not very many followers themselves, never engaging.
Right, I see what you mean. Yeah. They were just following you, but there was no sort of interaction with your feed. Yeah.
And I kind of thought, it feels
ticks a box.
You're collecting.
Yes.
From your experience too, I think it's like that you can sort of, the difference when there's a sense of engagement with what you're doing.
I think the word you're looking for is performative.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes. So I don't know. So I kind of just, it looked, and maybe I,
No, good on you. I never thought of doing that, actually. Yeah.
Maybe but I sort of looked along and instinctively kind of thought, okay, because you can actually remove people as followers as well.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why I actually don't know how many. I know I did get a sudden.
I don't know the exact number, but I knew there were a few. But what I did notice was, and even now, you still see each week there are unfollows, which is, it's fair enough. But the unfollows are not as many now. They're only in single numbers. But it was an interesting time. What about studios? Did any studios approach you? None. Okay.
No. Okay. And do you know what? I didn't even think about that at the time. It wasn't until I think they asked the question, I kind of thought, actually, no one did.
No, I had 2 or 3. And the platform contact, because they were quite overt, put their hand up and said, well, we saw in the Yogis of Colour groups or in the WhatsApp group, some people had come in there to say, oh, such and such a studio, they want to do better. So there was a few approaches, but
no, I saw some of those. I kind of I guess, but I didn't have any studios directly approach me.
Okay.
What I did have, which I also found, which actually was performative, was random mostly DMs from organisations, companies, kind of wanting me to be, usually being promotional material of some kind. So for example, but nothing to do with yoga. So for example, there was a swimwear company that reached out and said, I wish I was making this up, but this is one example. This is what I mean when I say it's nothing to do with yoga. It was one that they said that I would be a perfect fit to model swimwear for them. And it was a legitimate company. I looked them up and I kind of thought, I thought, why are you asking me? And then I thought, oh, hang on.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah. But you knew why. Yeah.
So I got that kind of
thing. That was interesting, yeah. Okay.
None of which I took up.
No.
Yeah. So
watch this space, yeah.
Very
more
weird
work
time.
to be done. But hey ho. Thanks for sharing. I hadn't thought of some of those insights with the followers, but yeah, thanks for sharing. So 2021, what have you got in store for the rest of the year? Any retreats coming up when we're allowed? Workshops, time for you to promote whatever you'd like to promote.
Yeah. So I haven't got any retreats planned for now, actually.
Okay.
I've got plans, but I'm sort of holding these plans lightly because 2019 I was really organised and I had all of these big things in place that I was going to do in 2020, which didn't happen. So
you still got them ready to go.
Yeah, I guess so. I think, but in a way, yes, and in a way, no. And the reason I say that is because whatever we're going back into after this is not going to really be exactly the same.
No, it can't be, can it?
So, yeah, and I did actually, one of the things I did find a bonus of 2020 was being able to, with the technology, to study online with people that I may not have had the chance to before because of geography. Where the teacher I studied with meditation last year, and actually I did a couple of her other things, like workshop things, called Tracee Stanley.
Okay, yes, I've heard of her. Yeah.
And she, I just remember something, I'm probably not going to get the exact words of what she said, but it was really along the lines of, like, in a way, like the old ways of doing things in a way are kind of past, that there is still, I think we have to actually come to terms with some of the things that we did before in the way we did them before aren't necessarily going to work post-COVID.
No, absolutely.
So being open, thinking about doing things differently, because it is going to be to a certain degree required that we do certain things differently.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that really made me think about, in terms of plans, I guess, for 2021 and beyond. So teaching online is something I never envisaged doing.
No, none of us did.
Yeah. So in terms of what I've got coming up, I've got my next rest sessions. I've got like these workshops called the rest sessions.
They are delicious. Book onto them. I'm telling you, I've been. They're amazing.
Thank you. But I started them in summer 2020, and I've been doing them every 2 to 3 months since. And so my next one is on April the 10th, and those workshops, they're like a mix of, and it's all like, I don't teach stuff that I don't practice myself. So so it's restorative yoga mixed with bits of meditation, mindfulness, bits of pranayama, and then there's yoga nidra, and there's the option, sort of, I offer a few journaling prompts within there, but they're optional. So I always say for anyone who isn't into journaling or writing, that you can use that space actually to rest, or you can use that space to draw or doodle.
Yes.
And so it's really the aim of it is to allow space for yourself and a way of coming back home to yourself.
Yes.
That's like, I like that. So when I did yoga nidra training, I think it's back in 2015 with Uma Dinsmore and Nalipta Tuli, and one of the sort of phrases that kept coming up again and again about yoga nidra was the idea that, you know, that it does bring you back home to yourself. And I felt like that actually, I feel like when I practice this stuff, that's how it feels for me. And then, you know, speaking to other people and their experiences of these practice, you know, whether they experience them with me or someone else, it's that same feeling. So
that's great.
So my hope is that it offers, it's like a 2.5 hour space for that, and giving yourself the permission to give yourself
No, it is beautiful. It is. It's so well needed now, and I think, you know, it's needed full stop. I think the past year has proved that we need to pause and slow down and have time for ourselves. So I just think it's very timely that, you know, we are offering these practices. So that's great. So what else is coming up with the rest, apart from the rest sessions?
Yeah, well, actually, that, as I might have mentioned in my newsletter, so that's actually, because I'm working on some other things, that's going to be the last one just for now until a little bit later in the year. So I probably won't do one in summer.
Okay.
But so my plan, all being well, is to resume hopefully in the summer my seasonal like yin and yoga nidra workshops. So
okay, lovely.
Yeah, so I've been doing those since around 2018, but I started in 2019 doing them at Yoga Points.
Okay, yeah.
And that was with those. I always have at least 50% of the proceeds go to Bricks and Soup Kitchen.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know, they are an incredible charity, and like, you know, I'm in awe of like what Solomon and Micah and a team do there. But even though they're based in Brixton, their work spreads way beyond Brixton, way beyond Lambeth, way beyond London, and they're not a big organisation. They're solely on volunteers and donations. So the reason I always say at least 50% is like it's sort of almost dependent on, so whether I will do the workshop whether like 2 people come or 20 people come. So depending on how many people come, like if it's a lower attendance, I just always give 100% of the money instead.
So good of you.
And it was just like, it was something that I just wanted. I know it's a small thing, but I wanted to find a way to do, I guess, let more people know about their work as well.
And help people at the same time.
So hopefully, so all being well, I could, that'll probably be online again, but hopefully I can resume that in the summer. And you know, and again, it's that thing of that feels close to my heart, because again, it's like it's Lambeth again. It's like I was born in Lambeth as well. So, and I've kind of just been really like following their work for a long time, and seeing like what the work they've done and how it's grown. So if anyone does happen to be interested, I'd encourage anyone to just like Google Bricks and Soup Kitchen and have a look at their website and see what they're up to.
And support as well.
And if able to, because you can donate through their website if it's available to do that as well. So there's that. I'm still keeping my classes online for now. So actually, and that's the other thing. So you're talking about like different threads that people have. So I am not only teaching at the moment, I'm still doing some script development type work. So that's why I don't have lots and lots of classes, but I'm at the moment still teaching my Yoga Point Brixton class online, which is Wednesdays, 11:30. All the details of my classes are on my website and on my Instagram.
What is your website and your Instagram?
My website is You Can Yoga. So that's the letter U, Can, CAN, Yoga, and the number 1. You Can. So You Can Yoga 1. That's my Instagram. My website is the same. youcanyoga.co.uk.
You Can Yoga. Very clever. Because you can yoga.
You can yoga.
You can yoga. Love it.
Yeah, but I always, and you can sign up to also to my newsletter on my website. I've kind of got a free audio meditation for anyone who does sign up.
Lovely.
So yeah, but I think the best way to keep up to date with what I'm doing is usually Instagram. That's probably where I be, and also on my newsletter, I try to sort of keep every 4 to 6 weeks. I usually send something out. Just
you're very good on Instagram. You're quite active, quite regular. Share some great stuff. Yeah. Something I realised that we touched on it, but we didn't get to it yet. Yoga magazine.
How I wrote.
Yes, you're a current writer, aren't you?
Oh yes, you started. Yes. So I started. Okay, so I started writing for them around the time I started teaching.
Okay.
So I started teaching late 2011.
And
you know, like the yoga show, the
Om Yoga show. The Om Yoga show, yeah.
Usually on in October. And
fingers crossed,
and this is when it was at still at Kensington. It wasn't Alexandra Palace yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I had been reading on Yoga magazine, and I went along to the yoga show. So I was, it was October 2011, and they always had a stall there. And I went over, to the stall, so they like had goodie bags and stuff, and the editor was there, and I just thought, I was chatting to him and sort of saying, I really enjoyed the magazine, and I just said, have you ever considered like having something that just followed what it's like as a new teacher, just your first year of teaching, because I'm just about to start teaching and I'd really like to read something like that. And through our conversation, asked me about myself, and I said about my TV background and my writing background. So he asked me if I would be interested in writing it, and I said, but I've never written for magazines. I've written scripts.
That's not what your intention was. So you blagged yourself a job.
Yeah. So, I've never written. So, but I wasn't actually thinking that.
It was you. You were just thinking you wanted to see it. Yeah.
And he said so, and so I was like, okay. And he said, send me 400 words just so I can see, basically, if you can write. So I did that. I sent him 400 words, and then I think I wrote about the fact that I had just been diagnosed with a condition called spondylolisthesis.
Okay. Tell people what that is. No, you say what it is.
So this was so it's, in my case, it's in the lower back, it's in the lumbar spine. So it's kind of means when you've kind of got to slip forwards. So in my case, it means my very lowest lumbar vertebra, L5, has slipped forward onto S1, so like the top of the bacon. So it's almost like being very lordotic, like very easy. Like, I sort of say maybe like duck butt, where your bum really sticks out, that sort of shape.
Okay.
That's kind of what, and I discovered that just the point where I'd actually completed my training, like I was qualified, just got my, official, yes, you are a teacher, 200 hours you've passed. And I was really thought, what does that mean? Does that mean that I can't teach? And so I found out at the same time, it sounds bizarre to say it, that I never really realised. I found out at the same time that I had an S curve.
Oh, wow.
And I had this in my lumbar spine.
Wow.
And so I wrote about that, and I started doing yoga therapy, actually, and that really, really helped and actually changed my whole idea about teaching, actually, in terms of like approach as well. And that was why I then got interested in like kind of yoga for back care stuff.
Yes.
Well.
Yeah.
So so I wrote about that, and I think I just sort of said, I called it, can you say spondylolisthesis? And then it was about finding this out and not expecting, that wasn't what I was expecting at the very beginning of teaching, and like, would I be able to teach at all? And the answer was yes, I could, but at the time I wasn't sure. And so that was my sort of, I guess, my pitch really. And the response I got was, okay, yeah, it's going to go into the January issue. And I was like, oh. And he said, can you just do that, like, just do like 400 words a month?
And how many years later you're still doing 400 words a month?
And that was it. Yeah, and that was it. So that was how it happened.
Since 2011. Wow.
Yeah. So I think I think that first one, I think that went into the January 2012 issue.
Wow. Okay.
And so
good for you, long time.
But I think it was like at the beginning, it was like, it kind of was that first year. It kind of was to follow that. And I sort of said, oh, well, yeah, I've done it now. Kind of like, it was like at the end of the year. But then he sort of said, would you be interested in writing some other stuff? So I wrote like a couple of features. I remember like, I wrote about, I interviewed kind of a sound gong bath practitioner.
How do you decide what to do each month?
Do you know what? I'm kind of just going instinctively with, so it's usually a mix of things, because sometimes it's stuff that is actually happening that I'm experiencing, but often what I've been doing increasingly, and I think if anyone has happened to have read it over a period of time, they'll probably see there's been a bit of shift. So I tend to, like, as much as possible, mention other people and other organizations.
Yes,
and like,
yes.
Yeah. So, and sort of tying that into a theme.
Yes.
So I've written about Bricks and Soup Kitchen, for instance.
Yes.
And
yeah.
I wrote about, I think it might have been the idea of things being a bit different, you know, post-COVID. So I mentioned Tracee Stanley. I mentioned in my most recent one, Dr. Gail Parker and her book.
Yes.
So it's usually related to something that I'm thinking about anyway, but trying to bring in. So it means usually I can kind of get someone else's website in there. Or,
that's good.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. So,
it's
but
great.
it's still
Thinking of others. Yeah.
Usually
keep amplifying, keep uplifting. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, naturally, I've actually done that for quite a few years with it.
It's good.
And I never know if anyone's going to read it or who's going to read it, but I think, well,
clearly they are, as you wouldn't still be there, love.
Okay, well, yeah, I guess, but I suppose it's a thing of like, I don't consider myself someone who has like a big platform, but I think it's an opportunity I have each month to say something for as long as it lasts, and as long as it feels right to do it.
Yeah. Well, it's nearly 10 years. Let's not underestimate. It's nearly 10 years you've been doing it. It's amazing.
So I guess my attitude is, why not try and use it for that? So
yeah, good for you.
There are times when, like, I do also sometimes mention what I'm doing, and I have had times when Martin sort of said, have you got like any stuff that you want to talk, like your own stuff you want to talk about? So I do that sometimes, but so it shifted a bit. So it sort of shifted from what it originally was, which was about that experience of being a new teacher and what it was like. It was actually very almost therapeutic to write it, because it's all of the things that happen at the beginning, and when you're trying to get classes, or you're traveling. I was traveling all over London, you know, trying to contend with things happening in class, and like, how do you deal with them? Like, sometimes
maybe you should revisit it, that first one you wrote. I'd be interested if you can, what do you think of it now?
Yeah, exactly. Actually, yeah, you know, I haven't looked at any of those ones from that first year for quite a long time, actually. But yeah, it's nice actually, because you never know who's reading. Like, you just don't. To be honest, when I write it, I never assume that anyone's reading it, but I do get some really nice messages from people. You know, they might email me, or they might send me a message on social media, and just, you know, I think I wrote about like for instance, when I did write about my mum passing in one of them, and I got so many messages from people saying that it just really resonated with them, and it was really helpful because it articulated something that they were feeling. And it's so in that sense, I think I try to be as honest as possible in whatever I'm writing.
Yes.
And I think usually that way it will resonate with somebody.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for all you do. It's been a pleasure hearing your journey. It's so like varied and so interesting. So yes, I'm glad we touched on that. I was nearly going to wrap up. I was like, oh no, on magazine.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
I nearly forgot to. But luckily we pulled it back. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your yoga journey. So our next yogi in the chair, 5th of April, is Tawny Cortez, a dear friend of mine. So yeah, look forward to hearing Tawny's journey. But for now, we say thank you so much for Paula. Wish you a good evening. In fact, just before that, Bill, do you have a question? We have Bill watching online. You can type it in the chat box if you prefer. And actually, if you're watching this on catch up, I should always say, if you do have a question, you can just type it into the comments and we will pick them up and Paula can answer a question. You can find her on social media. You Can Yoga 1 on Instagram. There you go.
Hi, Paula. I just booked on your April the 10th
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, I will look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed the interview. You're a very, very honest person and fascinating. I haven't really got any questions. Yvonne obviously put me on the spot.
That's all right. But Margaret, thank you so much for your comments. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you on the 10th
He is
of April.
so supportive. Bill is a very, very supportive person. So yeah.
Oh,
thanks, Bill. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
So there you go, booking for your workshop. So it's been a pleasure, and I'll see you anon. Hopefully see you Friday. I make it to Brixton. Yes. Take care, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. See you soon. Bye.